Hey everybody, back with another video, and for those 10 people that watch my terrible videos for arcade stuff, I have picked up something new that I look forward to getting into. This logic comparator from HP. It's very old, and basically you can do in-circuit testing and compare logic chips and stuff like that. But unfortunately, that's not the video for today. We are going to be working on some more Commodore 64 stuff that I picked up. This C64 I picked up on eBay, and I'm going to go ahead and this is the power supply that came with it, and then subsequently I picked up another C64 locally, and this is the power supply that came with that. So I figured we'd start where we start with most arcade stuff, is start with power, verify the power, and then plug it in. There's the 1084 that I did get working in the last video. So anyway, arcade guys, stay with me. I'm just kind of on a little bender, I guess, or something, distracted by these some retro computing stuff, and I just figured I'm interested enough to film it. So all right, so let me see if how I'm gonna do this. The first thing I'm gonna do is we'll test this power supply here. No, we'll test this one here. This is the one that actually came with this from eBay. The power connector itself typically has like 4 pins like this. The top two, if you have the indentation facing up, these top two is 9 volts AC, and then the bottom middle is 5 volt ground, is logic ground, and then that one right there on the right is 5 volts. So what I'm going to do is, I got my multimeter on here. You can see that, and then I also just hooked up the negative lead to a like a jumper wire, and it just popped off. And what we'll do is we'll hook up one lead to the jumper like this, and then I'll hook up my red lead like that. So let me power it on and get that set up. I'll be right back. Alright, I have my meter hooked up to auto volt, so it'll detect whether it's AC or DC. And I have my black lead to one of the 9 volt ACs, and then we're just going to touch this one. Oh, you can't see it, darn. Let me do it. Yeah, figures it'd pop off. These leads kind of suck. They don't grab really good. Cheap Amazon purchase probably. So anyway, we got that set right there, and we're only getting 1.7 volts on the AC. So we know that that part is bad. So now we'll go ahead and hook up to the ground, which is going to be right there. And we'll touch the 5 volts, and we get 5.1. Now if I use my auto range and go to DC, 5.124. So that's good, but a lot of people say that these power supplies they're so old, and you know, it's all encased in epoxy and everything, that they go bad, and typically when they go bad, they fail and they blow the 5 volts out, and you know, blow chips and stuff in the Commodore. So the good news is that I had low AC voltage, which is fine if the voltage is low. I'm not going to damage anything, and the 5 volts was good. So it makes me think that maybe this Commodore was working okay. The other thing is, I'll pause and then we'll come back and test this one real quick, which was the second from the second Commodore that I picked up. Alright, so I grabbed that power supply that we just tested, wrote no 9 volt AC on it. We're going to test this other one. Hopefully you can see that pretty good, where the notch is right there at the top. Hook up one of my leads right here. And then see, it's kind of hard sometimes to get the lead to stay on there. I guess it would help if I plugged it in. Alright, we're getting 10.3 volts on the 9 volt AC line, and I think that's fine. It's not going to be exactly 9 volts, it's not regulated or anything like that. The 5 volts I think is regulated inside there, inside the brick, and then inside the computer itself over here there's a couple voltage regulators for the that converts that 9 volt, and I'll show that in a second. So now we're looking at the 5 volts. And getting a little high, almost 5.2. Let's go to auto range. So a lot, from me reading the forums, a lot of people don't recommend running these original power supplies because there's just too much risk of hurting a chip or something like that. So what I did is actually went to C64PSU.com. I think it's in Poland or something like that. And actually, let me take this off. And bought a replacement power supply that looks like this. And maybe I'll test this one too, just to show the difference of the voltage testing. This one actually has all the pins populated, but the pinout's still the same. You have the 2 at the top are the 9 volts. The one at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock are all ground. And then 4 o'clock, well, I guess it's not really a clock, is it? But you kind of get the idea. 3 o'clock. But then pin number 4 and 5. See, is that? Should be 5 volts. Might have to double look at that. Why does that look a little different? Yeah, I guess it's just the pin. It doesn't have the full complement of pins. This one over here, so it's throwing me off a little bit. But anyway, I know those are ground and those are 9 volts, and that one in the bottom over here, right there, is 5 volts. So let me hook onto that, and maybe we'll test that as well. Alright, while I was testing that plug, I don't even know where I left off. I have to actually... Those pins are just too tight for me to risk it, and I thought I might have shorted something out or something. So I figured I would open it up, and it does look like... Let me bring this up here. It does look like there is 2 fuses there, because I thought I might have shorted something out, but it looks like there's a F1... Does that just pull out? No, it's soldered in. I was hoping that maybe if I happen to blow a fuse, I don't know how I'd have to pull that whole board out and desolder that. I can't even tell what size that is. Anyway, obviously he's got a couple little power supplies in here. This is a 5 volt power supply right there. It says 5 volts at 2 amps. And this must be the... I don't think I'm going to take that off. 2 by 9 volt or something. Primary, oh, it's definitely, primary side is 115 volts, and then I guess that's the secondary. It says 2 by 9 volts. So anyway, since we have it off, I will plug it in. Get the power light on. Let me see how I can do this here. It's kind of hard to see with the but anyway, there's a ground right here. I'm on auto volts, and if I test, that should be 5 volts. So 5.2 volts on the 5 volt side. And then for AC, I think I'm gonna have to come all the way over here. Another place to check 5 volts is probably right here, if you can see that. But for AC, probably gonna have to come up over here. Yeah, 12.9 volts AC. So that it's probably a little bit higher because my wall voltage is probably closer to 130 volts maybe. I don't know, instead of the 9 volts out. That's why it's probably a little bit higher. It's not 115 volts in, it's more like 120, 125 probably coming in. Yeah. Anyway, it looks like the power supply is good, so I did not short it out or anything like that. I'm going to put it back together, and then we'll plug in the Commodore. Okay, so now with a known good power supply, you know, I felt comfortable plugging it in, and I've already done this, so I'm backtracking. But all I got was a black screen, so I knew I was going to have to take this apart. There's 3 screws here on the bottom, and then you lift up the top part, disconnect the keyboard like this, if I can get it out. Disconnect the LED for the power light, and then the keyboard just comes straight off. There are these tabs in the back that kind of connect in into the back there at those 3 locations, and all of mine are in place. And I could tell that this thing didn't look like it had been opened before, just based on or worked. All right, so I had to pause for a second, but this RF shield is held into place with a screw right there, and I think 2 up here at the top, 1 there and 1 there. Oh, 3 at the top there, and then 2 down here. It also doubles as a heat sink for I guess I think these are the ROM chips. Also the crap, what is this? This is the PLA chip. That's something. This is the processor, the 6510. These are the 2. They're not PIAs, are they? What are they? Something that. Anyway, I'll cover that later. But what I was going to focus on is the power section here. And you can see, I'm going to do some testing because I looked at the schematic, but I haven't revisited it since a few days ago. So obviously you have a fuse, a bridge rectifier. The power plug comes in here, goes through these devices here. Looks like a capacitor. This is the switch, which will, so once you plug it in, it's getting power here, and then the switch actually switches the 9 volts and the 5 volts through. And there's actually 6. So there's ground and well, the ground probably is connected here, and then this switches the 5 volts and the 9 volts. And then you have these some filtering capacitors, and then this voltage regulator here, and I think this is another voltage regulator there. So we will test all of those real quick, because one of the things that I didn't see a lot of YouTube videos on is just testing the voltage right here after you plug it in. The other cool thing about this version of the board, and I'm not a Commodore expert, so I'm learning from other people's videos, but this is made in 1984. Does it say what revision number it is? It's a 250425, as you can see down here. The other thing that's kind of cool is you can kind of tell it hasn't been removed, because the bottom RF shielding is still soldered in place. Sometimes that would be removed or not soldered back in if it was repaired. And I also already cleaned off some of the heat sink compound on the chips and stuff like that, because I was removing them. But the cool thing about this version of the board is all the chips are basically socketed except for the RAM chip down here, and some of the TTL stuff for the RAM chips. And I think that's all I was going to talk about. I just want to, there's your clock, or right there, your crystal, and we'll probably check the power and maybe put in the dead cart that I have. But I think this is, I actually have a problem with this. I don't think it's working. And then I was able to get an image using just a regular cart. So, but first we're going to test the power. That's what I'm going to do. I'll be right back. All right, so I have this schematic here, but actually it says 1982. This came, actually moved over here. It came with the, I think it came with the one I bought on eBay. I'm not sure. But it has the user guide and the programmer's reference guide and stuff. So the schematic does have detail the power, and I figured what I would do is just kind of review it real quick. Actually on the board, so hopefully you can see this okay. I'll zoom in as tight as I can. So basically I don't have it plugged in right now, but here's your power connector. The AC, I think, is the top 2 legs, and then you have ground and 5 volts from the power brick. That is coming into, the AC comes into this inductor here, and the 5 volt goes to this inductor here, I think L5, and another, one of the other AC lines, so there's 2, it's alternating current, so there's 2 of them, comes into this fuse. So I think if you're not getting, voltage to the SID chip, maybe, I don't know, I haven't had to troubleshoot all of this all the way through, but you should check this fuse here. But that's definitely for the 9 volt AC line. And then the 5 volts, this switch here basically switches the 5 volt line as well as one of the 9 volt lines. So I think this over here on this side, these top 2 right here, I don't think are anything. And then this one over here is, I think, is the 9 volt, and I think this is the 5 volt. So when you switch it up, it's just switching the 5 volt line over. And then the 9 volt comes into this bridge rectifier here, and then also gets rectified by this diode CR6, and that is your unregulated, is it on the banded side or unbanded side? Yeah, I think right here would be your unregulated 9 volts right there. And let's see, from the bridge rectifier, yeah, the bridge rectifier feeds has some, comes into some of these filtering capacitors. So I think C19 is for the 5 volts, C90 is for the 12 volt line. I don't know, because the schematic isn't clear on where that's C88. Yeah, that's also for, I guess, the 12 volt line. So this maybe is for the unregulated C90, might be for the unregulated 9 volt. So those are the filter capacitors, and that comes into, oh, you can't really see, this is a 7812, so that's the 12 volts, and this is the 7805, and this is the 5 volt can, is what it's called. So I don't know exactly. I know I've read about it, and that's used to power a different, not the logic voltage, because you can, the regular 5 volt that comes in from your power brick is actually the logic voltage for all the TTL chips, and this voltage regulator here is generating a different 5 volts for something else. But anyway, I figured what I would do is just plug it in and do some test measurements real quick. Alright, so I have it power supply hooked up, and we're just going to power it on. Whoops. And then the first thing I can do is just put my black lead here on auto and test one of these pins to the LED. Should be 5 volts. Or to, what there? Oh, I guess I'm not plugged in. Alright, so this is ground right here, or anywhere around the frame is ground. And if I go to either pin 3 or pin 1 on my LED connector, you'll get 5 volts. You can also come to the one of the sides of the, or either side probably, of this inductor here of L5 and measure it there as well. For the voltage regulators here, to see if they're working, you can see it's 10 volts on pin 1, ground is pin 3, and then the regulated for the 5 volt can is on pin 2. You can hopefully see that. I know my hand's in the way a little bit. There you go. And the same with the 12 volts over here. Let's see here if I can get over here. Pin 1 is 18 volts coming in, and should be 12 volts going out. So you know the voltage regulators there are working fine as well. Let me see, where can you check the AC voltage? Probably right here. Let me see, we got 11 volts AC. Probably couldn't see where I was testing at. Or you could come, where's an easy way to test the AC voltage? One way to test it is to come over to the user port, and it's right there, and it pins 11 and 12 should be the 9 volts AC, if you see that there. So not 11 and 12, 10 and 11. Pins 10 and 11 is your 9 volt AC. So anyway, it's reading 10 volts, which is just a little bit high, but it's not a big deal. The other thing is there is a voltage regulator over here as well. I haven't really messed with measuring it here, but let's do that real quick. That's 6.4. On the emitter, what are we getting on the emitter? 6.1 volts on the emitter. 6.3 volts on the base. And 10.9 volts on the collector. So that is a tip 29. I think that's generating some type of voltage for the cassette player motor or something like that. So anyway, voltage is looking good. I haven't tested these capacitors. I'll probably do that in this video at some point. But we know the voltage is good, and I don't want to leave it running on. I don't have any heat sinks on there. So I guess at this point, we know our voltage is good. The other thing you can do is obviously test to a TTL chip. Is just go to, right here, and that would test the voltage receiving at the TTL chip. and then we could also check the reset circuit on this, but I'm not going to do that yet. Let's put a cart in and hook this up to a monitor and see what we get.